NVAX stock. It's Novavax Inc. That's NVAX. So this is a really cool one. What we just got was some news that Operation Warp Speed. So President Trump gave $1.6 billion to this company, Novavax. And this is a small vaccine manufacturing company that has been in early trials, but they just got a huge lump of money. They're on phase 2 trials right now already, and they want to move to phase 3 trials, and they're aiming for the beginning of the fourth quarter, with potentially coming out with the vaccine at the beginning of next year sometime, first quarter, maybe second quarter. And so, yeah, their CEO is like, maybe if we're lucky, we can go to phase 3 trials at the end of third quarter, but probably fourth quarter. And so this is another company developing an experimental vaccine, and Operation Warp Speed is the government just flooding them with money to manufacture the vaccine before it's tested or approved. Like, you just go ahead and ramp up manufacturing, and Fauci came on and said, like, yeah, I mean, it's whatever, it's a couple $1 billion, but we can gain several months, lead time by manufacturing these in advance before we know if they work or not. And I mean, whatever, it's just a couple $1 billion or whatever. So who cares? We just print it up. He didn't say that, but I mean, basically, who cares? Like, they're printing up billions, they're printing trillions. This is only 1.6 billion. This is nothing to them. So yeah, but this is so Novavax is a small company that has never brought a vaccine to market. It's a vaccine company that's never brought a vaccine to market. And so their first ever vaccine to market, they're trying to produce a COVID-19, coronavirus vaccine potentially in the first quarter. And so this chart is really interesting. So let's go out to a longer timeline. Yeah, so here on the daily candles, this company is a lot older than I thought. So they've been developing vaccines for how long? Since 2006? And they don't have any vaccines to market? Okay, so here's where their funding comes from. Novavax has been backed by Bill Gates Group, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and getting money from the CEPI. And so they've been developing vaccines for quite a long time with nothing to market. Go take a look at their site. So here's the Novavax site. They're committed to fight against COVID-19. They're at the forefront. And so here's what they're working on. I mean, they have COVID-19, flu, RSV, Ebola, MERS, SARS. And so they have a bunch of vaccines that they've been developing for quite a long time. And obviously the COVID-19 is the huge rush now. And so they've had support there in phase 2 trials, trying to move to phase 3. And heading into phase 3, yeah, they got $1.6 billion from the government now to start production of 100 million doses of this COVID-19 vaccine before it's proven if it's effective or not. They're just going to start producing these vaccines. And so they have the adjuvants. These are traditional vaccines that have the adjuvant's like an extra thing that helps your body respond greater with a smaller dose. And so, yeah, it's just trying to make the vaccines more efficient with smaller doses. And so this is a traditional vaccine company, has never brought anything to market, and they have a flood of money from private and from government sources. Yeah, so here's just another look at the news blast. So yeah, it's 1.6 billion from Trump's Operation Warp Speed to start producing this vaccine before it is actually past any kind of FDA approval or the phase 3 trials. But yeah, this company has never brought a product to market before. And this is crazy. So yeah, 100 million doses. Let me go back to the chart. So yeah, check out this chart. I mean, it goes back to 1996. They've been privately funded from Bill Gates and other private funding organizations since 1996. They've never brought a product to market. They've had valuations from $3 to $300. This is absolutely crazy chart. All-time lows just now leading into the coronavirus, recent situation. and Feb whatever 20 here. Yeah, so the stock crash that happened in around Feb 20 is right around an all-time low for their stock, and they've had a really interesting stock chart here. So let's get in closer on this chart and check out what's going on now. So this has been a pretty good bullish chart since the crash, and basically have we basically have increasing. Here's kind of a low volatility increasing trend line here, and then we get a higher volatility kind of steeper trend line here. So this stock has sort of bubble support, and it's on its own bubble trajectory here. And this news blast recently has not done the parabolic kind of crash reversal, which is pretty interesting. So like this stock looks legitimate bubbly with potentially 3 levels of bubble trajectory, like going parabolic right now. And what you usually see on a news blast like this, like it gaps up, and if it flags out and doesn't crash, then usually you'll get another move up and then it'll come down some. And so this is what I expect over the next few days from this chart. That's the most likely scenario on these kind of news blasts. And so this, I mean, this company is obviously a huge lottery ticket, and it's at oh my God, it's at 100. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, it was at like $5 or $6 around Feb, and now it's an expensive lottery ticket at 100 already. It's already up on a couple of bubble trajectories, but it could still be a pretty interesting one to sort of trade the hype chart, because we have the rest of this year for trials to see if it gets passed or not. And so I think this one, I mean, maybe comes up and then settles out, and then it shouldn't be any news for a while. So the thing to look for on this is if it kind of hits like a higher trajectory kind of bubble. So I think the way to trade this, and this is not investment advice as usual, but if we're getting these ascending kind of bubble support patterns, which it looks like we may be, and this one just hit news, so this isn't really a spot to put a bubble line, but if this stock kind of comes and finds support and starts tracking upwards on a higher trajectory, it could be a really interesting one to trade over the next few months, and then a lottery ticket if it is the coronavirus vaccine, or one of them, or whatever happens next year. So you could day trade this thing because it's doing this crazy stuff. Like if it pops up like this, during day trading session today, that could possibly be a spot to sort of day trade it short back down to a reasonable area, which is usually it'll come down in between in here somewhere. Usually when these news blasts jump, they'll go up, they'll come back down a little bit higher than where they started. But usually the spot that it gaps to is higher than where it kind of sits. But then if it picks up a bull market line, then you can kind of see the trajectory of it, something like that, and sort of trade that line. Or if it comes back down. So yeah, so basically the idea with this one that I would be looking at is if it pops higher, and these are just days here, so this is small, but yeah, if it pops way up again, that would probably be a spot to short it and then see where it settles down and see if it breaks down back to this trend line, or if it can find a higher angled trend line, and then that could be a lottery ticket kind of spot. But if it well, yeah, there's a lot of space below where it was trading. I doubt it will come back down here. I think this one is going to pick up a higher level trend line. Like it could come all the way back and just kind of sit until it picks this trend line up. So if it settles down in this area and just kind of flags sideways, I think that won't be too interesting until pretty far out in the future, maybe the end of the month or something like that, until this trend line catches up with it and it can start getting support again. Um, but if it does pick up a higher level trend line or something in here, yeah, yeah, I guess in either case, I mean it could crash down a little bit farther, but it'll probably get back up here by the end of the month. So I guess it doesn't the support's not that high. I mean, it's all the way down here in the 60s, and it's probably going to be sitting around 90. That's kind of risky to buy in here at 90 if it's going to trail down and then maybe back up way later. Hmm. Yeah, I guess maybe a day trading kind of short setup if it jumps, and then support here is it's a little bit risky until a higher level trend line's established. Yeah. So, as far as like a spot to go long, you want to go long along a trend line, but we don't have a higher level trend line set up yet. So the trend line to go long on is way down here, and it's probably not going to make it down there. So this is a tricky one. It's a tricky one to find a long spot on, and yeah, we just have to see how this one kind of sets up on the trend lines. All right, so that's Novavax, the way overfunded company that's never brought a vaccine to market. And they are working on all kinds of stuff. But they have worked on SARS vaccines, which is highly related to these vaccines. So I think that's probably a good look, and also just the long-term support from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Probably, well, I mean, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation have supported like a whole mess of different vaccines, this year. Like in the last few months, they've started supporting a bunch of different vaccine companies, but this company has had support for a long time. Goodness, it was what was it like 1996 or something? I can't believe how old this company is with no products to market. Um, so I don't know if that's an advantage or not. But anyways, this that's a lottery ticket. So let's take a look at the market and see what's going on with the pre-market activity. And so this is interesting. I mean, we got up here, we did close high, but then we didn't get a support bounce. We got a breakdown under back into boring town. We're back into boring zone here, and the breakout is kind of eh. So let's take a look at the momentum that we're getting right now. Yeah, the momentum that like this kind of area looked like a good technical setup for a bullish move, but the momentum didn't look that good. And so yeah, long-term momentum still in bull territory, just kind of stalled out. And so that's more bullish, kind of over the next few months. And it's making bearish moves on the shorter time frame momentum. Not aggressively, it's just weak bearish, and coming into the next couple of days, it's in bear territory, just kind of stalled out. So the very short-term outlook on the momentum is more bearish, and then the longer outlook is still bullish. Let's just see what we're getting kind of coming in. Yeah, just kind of stalling out in bear territory. So it doesn't really, yeah, that doesn't really look good for a bullish kind of move on the momentum. And as I was looking at yesterday, I mean, we have like like the small caps are weak, financials are weak. Like it's not rotating from the tech stocks into the other sectors right now, but the Qs are still hot. They're still going for all-time highs, and so we're getting a bigger and bigger separation between these tech stocks that are super hypey and they're still doing stock buybacks versus the other sectors that have the big solvency risks. They have the low interest rate risks, like all of the actual risks in the economy of bankruptcy and of non-profitable kind of bank loans and that sort of thing. So maybe reality is kind of starting to happen as these separate. Reality is kind of hitting these sectors, but the Qs are still just getting, uh, they're still just doing some buybacks and stuff like that. But the amount of buybacks they're doing, it doesn't indicate this chart. And so the Fed started blowing the balance sheet up, and so the balance sheet liquidity was really hot, kind of through this area, but they trimmed the balance sheet and they've mostly stopped buying, and they've started pulling money back out of the repo market. So there's very little liquidity coming from the Fed right now. And I saw that they're starting to buy some more mortgage-backed securities, but not the bond buying is really low, and they're not buying treasuries right now, and they're taking money out of the repo markets. Treasury general account is still going up, which is taking liquidity out. So as far as the domestic liquidity goes, it hasn't been the Fed pumping tons in for almost a month now. It's been low liquidity on that side of the coin, and kind of tracking the flows of foreign money is tricky. But the big liquidity blast that we got, through this part of the rebound was also going to foreign central banks and all over the place. And the Fed buying sheet that they came out with has Apple and Microsoft on there, like companies that need no support. The Fed's going to buy some of those. The Fed's going to buy foreign corporation bonds. I mean, they're just picking random. Well, I'm sure it's not random, but it's not what I was expecting to see on the bond buying sheet. Like, I thought it was going to be a bunch of primary banks on there that they were going to be buying bonds of to make sure that the banks can stay solvent and that sort of thing. But that's not at all what was on the bond buying sheet the Fed came out with. It was these random companies that don't need it, or international companies. Like, why are you buying those? And then, there's like auto companies, some things that make more sense. And Blizzard Entertainment was on there. Like, what in the world are they doing? It just seemed really crazy. And they're not buying much at all on that sheet. They just have a sheet of stuff they can buy. But as of right now, they're not buying much. And so we'll get some more Fed numbers and Treasury numbers Thursday, probably after market close. But as for right now, it doesn't look like there's a ton of liquidity. It doesn't look like there's rotation of money into the other sectors, and the momentum is weak. And now we're kind of back down into the boring zone. What's the dollar doing? Oh, yeah, just kind of, yeah. So, I mean, this is not particularly strong bullish move on the dollar. I mean, people are saying the dollar is weak, and they're talking about, the dollar breaking down and hyperinflation and all that stuff, but that's just not really what the chart is showing. Like, what are we on, dailies? Yeah, we can get way back here. So look, I mean, since 14, yeah, there's bull market support under this dollar trend way back here. And I mean, the dollar has been in a bullish trend since the financial crisis crash, like way back here, 2012. Like, look, it gets support all the way back here. And so it just keeps kind of, bouncing and bouncing off support. But these bounces and these moves here are off of that long-term support that comes all the way from the financial crisis. So any of the theorists that are saying like the dollar could get stronger from here, like, that's not a mind-blowing like thing to assume could happen. That's the trend that the dollar has been in for 12 years, and it's getting support here. So, I mean, just kind of staying on a kind of a boring upward trend from here is completely normal, and that's not super bullish for the stock market. Um, But if we do get another big breakdown here, like out of the long-term trend, super bearish like move on the dollar, like that would point to higher inflation. That would probably be bullish for the market. And so the dollar's a really important thing to watch. But right now, I mean, the dollar is just kind of doing boring stuff at long-term support, and it's not a dramatic like breakdown. Like 97 on the DXY, that's pretty strong. That's pretty strong, and it could just boringly push up for who knows how another 5 years or something. Like this trend line has been holding for a long time. It's like 10 years or something, and we're at support now, basically on the dollar. So I don't see a whole lot of things that support a big bullish move from where we are now. And the VIX, okay, yeah, the VIX kind of it. We had this little gap here, and the VIX had made it past this gap back down to our kind of lower edge area here, but we're still up in the 20s. Like we had this gap up into the 20s back here, and so this is kind of bull market VIX area down here, from 10 to whatever 15, or once you start getting above 15, it's like risky, but it usually comes back down. But I mean, here we gapped up into the 20s, and we've been up in bear market VIX territory for this whole crash, and this is a pretty bullish move on the VIX here. Still in the 20s, close to the 30s again. So I'm not, yeah, I'm not seeing a whole lot of bullish stuff at the moment for this. But there's not much bearish momentum either. So I mean, basically right now we're just back into boring town, and this basically the bullish breakout had a lot of overhead resistance, and it barely even got there. Like it just kind of got to the first overhead resistance zone here, where we had the you know this reversal, and just kind of broke back down into this area. So now I guess overhead, there's just this line now, and here, and then the 2-year kind of bull support line that we're still underneath. So there's a lot of stuff for the bulls to get through here, and this is not a bullish setup at this point. This setup is definitely more bearish, and to the bearish side, there's almost no resistance until you get down to this moving average area. And now we have this zone expanding. The long-term moving average is still trending down. So we've been above it for a while here, which being above it is bullish territory, but it's not a bull market signal until this trend line turns up. It needs to turn up, and you have to get support from it. And as for right now, we have bounced off the top of it a couple of times, but it's still trending down. So it's not bullish yet. We're just kind of in between bull and bear market territory. We're below one long-term support line. We're above another one. We're above the long-term moving average, but it's still trending down. It hasn't given any kind of bull market support yet. And then as far as the bear targets, they're all kind of converging down here in this area, where we have the 12-year bull support line here. We have the moving average, and then we have this kind of expanding zone that's pushing down now underneath these other lines, which will be less important. So really, we're just looking, as far as bear targets, down here to the moving averages and the long-term support. So there's a lot of room to swing again on the bear side. And yeah, let's see what we get today. This could potentially be a spot to set up a short trade, because there's a lot of overhead resistance for a bullish move now, a lot. And there's very little resistance to the downside if it does make a bearish break. So I think bullish breaks would be wobbly and weak. If it starts moving bullish, it'll be like this way, and it's going to run into a bunch of resistance. But a bearish break could be sharper with very little resistance from here. So I think asymmetry on shorter term trades, maybe a day or two kind of trade, especially with the VIX looking like it's going to pop. It's more bearish. This is a bearish setup that I'm looking at today. And yeah, I think I want to see how the cash opens and see how we react with this trend line. If we get like another good bounce or rejection off of this trend line, I think that would be a good bearish setup. I mean, right now, just kind of it's just. I mean, this is a pretty good kind of bullish rejections here, but this is off market. This is off market kind of stuff. So I want to see how the cash trades and see if a bearish setup happens. But yeah, the just like a good rejection out of here on cash trading session would set up a good bearish trade for here with very little resistance to the downside. Yeah, so that's the look, and not investment advice, all that stuff. Please subscribe, and check out mmtgear.com. I have some fun kind of trading t-shirts on there if you want to support the channel. And yeah, I think that's probably good for now. I'll see if there's any other kind of hot news. It seems like there's more coronavirus stuff coming out now, and there's a little bit more hype on the virus. But I haven't been focused on that. I've mostly just focusing on liquidity and focusing on this bubble model with our long-term support lines and seeing where we are, just just in the middle of nowhere still. And it looked like we might get something interesting here, and we didn't. So boring, and possibility of a bear breakdown. And happy trading.